If you're a business owner who's ever felt overwhelmed, constantly putting out fires, or just struggling to grow beyond a certain point, then you're not alone. If you want to get out in front of staff not following procedures, feeling like you're the bottleneck in the business, and you're being stuck in like a low profitability cycle, then this is for you, even if you've tried systemizing before. In this video, I'm going to share with you a new perspective on systemization and leadership that might just transform the way you run your business. I'm Ryan Gray from Systems for Growth, and I've built 4 businesses over the last 2 decades and helped hundreds of others do the same. See, there are only really 3 problems with systemizing your business, and once you get these right, you can have your time back, your team systemized, and your profits heading north. And it's probably a bit easier than you think because you can create the conditions for freedom and profit. See, if you want to make ice, you can't do it directly. We need an environment where ice actually shows up. Now, if I put water in the freezer, then I don't even have to try. Ice just shows up. It's the same thing with systemizing in your business. If you put the work in to create the right conditions, success will just show up. You see, systemization is more than just mapping your processes. It's actually about leading a business that runs smoothly, efficiently, and ideally, and probably most importantly, without you having to be involved in every little detail. But here's the kicker. Most business owners approach systemization in a way that almost guarantees that it won't work. Because if you're starting with process mapping, I promise you that it won't work, and here's why. You can't write a procedure for every situation that will ever occur. Because, what happens when the inevitable problems arise outside of your carefully crafted process map? When, a client throws a curveball or there's an unforeseen circumstance. You know what to do, but your team don't. And your automations, if you have them, are largely technical and fixed. Plus, they're only as good as the person feeding them the information. I just think of how many times I've been frustrated because my team couldn't make decisions as well as I could. Things that I just thought were basic. They haven't got the same context as me as the business owner. It's one of the main reasons why business owners get stuck as the bottleneck in their own company. Now, I call this the octopus syndrome, where there are many tentacles but only one head. And if the head wants to take a break, then the tentacles just kind of float around doing their own thing. Here's an illustration. When I hired my first executive assistant, I wanted her to think like me, to block my interruptions, manage my calendar, handle my emails, all the things that an EA would normally do. But how could she do that without constantly checking in with me? Do you want to attend this event? How should I respond to this email? Is this person a time waster or an important contact? She had no way of knowing, right? There are 2 ways that I've solved this problem. The first is by proximity and time. And that's spending years working closely with your team where they'll absorb the thinking by osmosis, where they just pick it up organically and operate because they're in your vicinity. But this is slow and inefficient. And if I'd made a bad hire, which happens to the best of us, right? I'm certainly not immune if multi-billionaires aren't. Then you're taking several months, at a minimum to rectify the situation. And I was already working long hours and it just seemed like there had to be a better way. So I developed a decision-making framework. I had an epiphany. What if I could codify my decision-making process so my team can make decisions that are almost as good as mine, if not better, because they have more context than me usually. Because, they're the ones speaking to the client or who are on site or who are doing the work, whatever it is. They almost always had more context about that exact situation than I did. And I realized that my team could make decisions similar to me instead of everything landing on my desk. And of those 2 ways, a decision-making framework is definitely the fastest and most efficient. It's also the most scalable. See, by implementing a decision-making framework, you as well can empower your team to act without you constantly needing that input. This framework becomes the foundation for consistent, high-quality decisions across your business. And it's very different to traditional systemization, which either tries to apply some sort of dramatic change management process, which still doesn't replicate the business owner or C-suite, like the CEO, CFO, Chief Operating Officer, or whoever, or it ignores it altogether and goes straight to the actual technical aspects. Just imagine if you had an organization who could make decisions like they were the owner or the CEO. And I know that not everyone is capable of this, but if you can give your leaders a decision-making framework, you can start to replicate yourself, and that's where you start to get your time back. Now, I've got some bad news and I've got some good news. The bad news is that your team will never follow your process. Let me illustrate with an experience, and then I'll show you how to get them to follow your process. I'm pretty good at writing processes, and I've written some beautiful documents where, I've spent weeks or even months, figuring out the best way of doing something. And one particular marketing process saved probably hundreds, maybe thousands of hours across multiple team members. Now, just as an aside, nobody seems to write, marketing processes, but we have an excellent system for this, which could even add to your competitive advantage as a business, because virtually none of your competitors will be doing it, but that's just an aside. Now, the process that I had was so good that if they just followed the exact steps, the campaign was virtually guaranteed to work every time. And I'd given it to the team, I'd explained it properly, and then I'd let them loose. Then I was devastated to find out how much money they had lost on a failed campaign. Why, after all these years as an expert in the field, how can I still have a team not doing what they were asked? It was infuriating. So what I realized was that if my team wasn't aligned, my systems were doomed to fail. Think about it. If your team doesn't understand the bigger picture, if they're not connected to the purpose behind the processes, they won't care about it. In fact, they can't care about it. It'll just be a nuisance to them rather than essential. And you'll end up with inconsistency and mistakes and frustration and all of those ugly things. So here's what I discovered. Systemization isn't just about automating tasks or documenting workflows. It's about creating a culture where your team is aligned with your vision and values, where everyone knows what's expected of them and why it matters. And most business owners, unfortunately, think that they can get their team on board just simply by explaining the processes. But as I found out, that's not enough. I needed to go deeper. I needed to coach them, align them with the company's direction, make sure they were as committed to the success of the business as I was. I had created that bad culture, and I was the leader, and I wasn't doing a good job, and it cost me more than any sane person would pay. And I've made that mistake, but I've figured out the coaching and the training and the alignment steps that they don't really teach you that at university or any business school or course, and that's what I want to give to you. Next, let's deal with consistency. Once I had my decision-making framework and I had my team all on the same page, I noticed something else in my 2 decades in business. Over time, systems drift, and not in a good way. What I found was even effective systems at the time eventually ended up being ignored, either in part or even completely. I had a manual of amazing processes that most business owners would dream of, and some of the team, especially new hires, didn't even know about them. So I realized that there was very little accountability in my business. The systems were great, but they weren't being used consistently. The team were on board, they understood the importance to the business, but sometimes it was just easier to cut corners when it doesn't really matter. Now that's human nature, right? But the problem was cutting corners did matter, and I would be the one having the client on the phone to me explaining or yelling how unhappy they were. And I was being sucked back into the business all the time. So I began a journey of figuring out how to get good people to follow good systems and be accountable for doing it every time instead of just most of the time. It turns out it's quite simple. All you need are some easily replicable structures in place, and that will help to maintain the importance on the systems. So I implemented these structures and I ended up being able to run a business in a fraction of the time. Some weeks it was a little more, some a little less, but it turned a 60-hour job into about a day a week for me at the time. Now what this also did was it brought about the management by the numbers, and everyone knew what their key number was and what they had to achieve. And if they were hitting it every day, every week, every month, every year. Now this is the reason most systemization attempts fail, and this is big. Here's the harsh truth. They fail because they focus too much on the technical aspects of the process mapping, the automations, those kinds of things, and not enough on the human element. They fail through lack of team alignment, because if your team doesn't buy into the systems, then they won't know how to follow them. They just won't follow them as an active choice. And there's an art that I'll teach you to getting the team to buy in. Overwhelming complexity. Trying to change everything at once leads to confusion and resistance. Diving into complex process mapping straight away is another way that they fail. Lack of clarity, all things that make systemization more complex than it actually needs to be. Systemization is actually really simple if you follow the methodology and put in the groundwork. That's it. That's really all you need to do. No accountability is another key reason for failure. Without clear communication and accountability structures, then even the best laid systems will break down. Ignoring decision making is another one. Your team needs a framework to make decisions without you, not just processes. Otherwise, you will always be the bottleneck. The good news, though, is that these are all avoidable, and I've developed the S3 framework, which is designed to address these exact challenges. It ensures your systemization efforts not only succeed in the general sense, but also scale with your business as it grows as well. Now, this is incredibly important because this is the key that unlocks everything. Part of becoming free and making more revenue, creating that environment where success shows up, is this. It's becoming a better business owner and a better leader of your team. I helped a friend recently systemize her business, and it was a multi-million-dollar business. And what I saw was, despite the best frameworks being put in place, she would turn up and she would ask for an 8-hour job in half the time with no notice. She would upset staff to the point of tears and chase away A players because she was frustrated. Now, A players will not stick around if ever you've worked with them. They won't stick around long term if there's any whiff of instability. But strong systems with a solid framework and an excellent leader, that will provide the stability and help grow your business faster than you thought was possible, because I've done it. Now, do you need the templates and processes and the systems? Yes. And we'll provide all of that to you. That's the easy bit. If you skip this last part though, the personal development, the leadership training, it doesn't really matter how good any of it is. If you keep on your current trajectory without changing, so will your business. You're both one and the same. I can give the same templates and systems to two different people. One will make tens of millions of dollars, and the other will say these are no good. That's the harsh reality of it. What we provide gives you the speed to skip ahead and not pay the ignorance tax of figuring out the fastest way to do all of this. You get to skip to the most efficient model. But you have to be willing to do the work on yourself as part of the growth of your business. So, if you're tired of being stuck in the day-to-day grind, if you're ready to go to work on yourself and your business to break through that glass ceiling and take your business to that next level, then it's time to take action. The S3 framework isn't just another system. It's a way to transform you personally, your business, to free up your time, and it increases your profits. And you know what the best part is? You don't have to do it all alone. So, book a call with me and my team. My team are excellent, and I can't take all the calls myself, obviously. Everyone wants to make more money with doing less work. So as long as you put in some work up front, you can join other clients who are achieving their goals. It's time to stop being the bottleneck and start being the leader your business needs. So book a call with me and my team, and let's get started on your journey to a more efficient, profitable, and scalable business. And doing it with reasonable ease, because you've created the environment where success shows up. I'll speak to you on the inside.